And this is the big energy debate. This is Wednesday, and so we're going to be talking about the Manifesto tracker. It's a big one indeed. And why do we do this? Because, as you know, the parties have a social contract, and they put that in the form of a manifesto. And if you vote for them on December 7, you sign that pact with them. And they say to you that when they come to implement that pact with you, what we want to do is you must understand what they are proposing to do before you put your signature on that document and say you approve it on December 7. And that's exactly what Manifesto Tracker is designed to do. We've been looking at a few sectors. Today we're going to talk about energy. And I have the man to do just that. He is going to be my co-presenter. Normally he'll be on the other side. I've just been asking him the questions and he'll be explaining them. But today he is a co-presenter. And so that's him. Nana Amoisi is with me. Hello, Nana.
Hi, Ivan. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you.
It's a pleasure. When it comes to the issue of energy, it's quite central to our living today.
Yeah.
Energy drives the economy. It ensures we have security, both physical security, energy security, and all the other dimensions. And so it is something that voters must incline or probably direct their attention to, because is that going to make them or make them, whoever they choose, to drive their energy needs. Very critical topic to discuss today.
And he heads the Institute of Energy Security.
Sure.
And that's why he's here, to help us walk through that. Let's begin with, we just start by just the numbers, right? We're just looking at how many promises the NDC and the MPP have put out as far as the energy sector is concerned, their manifesto. The MPP has 32 promises we counted on the energy sector, and the NDC has 31. It doesn't really, there's still much of a difference there. But one of the things I noticed reading the manifesto is that both of them understand the problems.
Is that the case? It doesn't matter the quantum of promises or pledges or the policies. It's the content.
The content in there.
That's very critical.
Yeah, that's critical. Let's go to some of the key things. And the reason I want to start here, and this is 2028 for the MPP, in terms of the universal electrification of the country, right? They are the same. NDC is also at 2028.
Sure. Initially, they put out 2025 in the abridged version, but when the full version came, it was 2028.
2028, yes.
2025 it's not achievable.
It's not achievable.
Quite difficult to achieve. Over the past 8 years or so, let me go back 15 years. Between 2016 2020, when did NDC lose power?
Oh, 2016.
Okay.
They lost in 2016.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
it's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been 8 years. 8 years. 8 years.
Between 2008 and 2016, the access rate grew by roughly 2.3% per annum.
Yeah.
But since then, from 2017, it's been quite low, less than 1.2% per annum. Just because it is now, we are just left with the last leg of access. And these are very remote areas, and some are island areas. And so to cross to this point, you just don't need the normal grid. You need to be looking at off-grid, connection to these communities.
Okay.
And so it's quite critical.
Yeah.
And then, of course, some investment have to go in.
Absolutely.
Within this economy, you can't just say that in 1 year you get 100%.
So that's why this was reviewed to 2028.
That is quite achievable.
For them. So you believe it is achievable, both of them, in 2028, you can achieve universal. That means that every single household in this country must have access to electricity.
It is achievable. And when you look at this in Africa, the sub-Saharan Africa, you rather want to say that we are the top guys. When you take away the North Africans, South Africa is more penetrated. Then next is Ghana. Within the West Africa corridor, we are more penetrated in energy access or electricity access than any other person. And
the reason why I wanted to start here is, if you really look at the energy sector, you can break down the big ticket items into some of 3 or 4. The first one, obviously, will be the electricity, and its provision. Yeah. But linked to that is the power sector debt that it comes with, an ability to keep the lights on, right? It has implications for everything else. If you're achieving universal access by 2028, what it means is that there'll be exponential growth in electricity consumption. And so your investments must keep pace in terms of power generation. Your transmission grid must be robust. Exactly. Your distribution grid must be robust. Yeah. Fuel supply to the generation must be And financing, which has been the biggest problem, must be on top of it all. Because if you to invest in building the infrastructure that you require in terms of the megawatts needed, installed capacity, but dependable capacity, you need money.
Of course.
But assuming you cross that, then you have to, on a daily, monthly, weekly basis, buy the fuel to power them.
Of course.
Which has been our problem in the past.
That's our biggest problem here. It's not that we don't have enough capacity. For now, our peak demand, system peak demand, both domestic and the export market, is not more than 3,700. And so for you to have an installed capacity of in excess of 5,400, dependable of close to 5,000 megawatts, and still struggle to put on your lights, means that there is that liquidity constraints that's really bringing us to this point. Fuel and the machines to be up and running.
I need to ask you this controversial question, and every person watching this must think about that. First of all, both parties say they want to reach universal access to electricity by 2028. And we've just analyzed what it would take to sustain this and to reach it. Getting there is one thing. And once you get there and the consumption grows exponentially, you then must keep the lights on. It's going to cost you more to do it. You're going to struggle more to get the capacity, etc. Which of these two parties, in terms of their track record, can keep the lights on by 2028 if they achieve universal access to electricity?
Okay, I'll start. Which one can achieve more? Looking at track record, the NDC has a better record when it comes to electricity assets than the MPP. Okay. That's for one. But who can keep our lights on? Evans, we'll get to the next bridge.
But I need an answer to that. We are looking at track record. I mean, the first bit you said is obvious, because when you look at the access and the growth that we saw, NDC has that. But again, the facts show, doesn't it, that in terms of who can keep the lights on, the evidence shows that the MPP over the last so many years since they've been in power, they've kept the lights on longer than the NDC has when they were in power.
What was NDC's problem in the last 4 or 5 years to 2016? It had to do with capacity, installed capacity. They struggle with that. And they also struggle with fuel supply to the existing capacity. That was the major challenge that NDC had. And they worked to build, add on the generation up to a point where all of us were discussing, and particularly the opposition, that there was excess capacity, even though a chunk of it can relate to the reserve margin that is required. That's something that is required by the PRC.
Currently, I was just reading the Energy Commission's report where we have a reserve margin of some 25%. That is good.
That's good, and that's super. It means that we are good if we are not really squeezed by cash flow. But then the last, largely the MPP have done well, came to meet the light on roughly in December 2016. The light was on because we built enough capacity. What was left was to be ensuring that we have enough of cash to buy fuel. We have enough of cash to probably sustain the grid, both the transmission and the distribution. That was what they need to do. We didn't have any problem at all in 2017 when it comes to power supply. Unfortunately, we misapplied the ESLA, okay? And so the legacy debt that we had at that time, close to about $2.6 billion, ESLA should have eroded or taken away all those debts in 5 years, because the fuel we're buying, we're paying ESLA, and yearly we were paying or contributing almost $650 million from ESLA. So in the space of 5 years, we expect that you can raise more than $3 billion and deal with the debts. Unfortunately, what happened to ESLA? It was not used for the intended purpose. And so today, we still have a debt of more than $2.2 billion. That cash flow constraints, okay, occasioned by, the mismanagement of the government, is what we are seeing today. We should not be seeing doom so at all if we have enough cash in the vaults.
But the evidence, though, and because we all live here and we put our lights on, we see in the last 8 years, they've kept the lights on.
Of course, largely on.
Yeah, even in the midst of that economic crisis that we're still in terms of the last generation, this is the worst economic crisis we've seen in a long, long time. And in the midst of that, they still kept the lights on. We know the NDC also had a similar challenge with the economy approaching 2026, right? 2016 with the IMF program, etc. Comparing those two in track record is important, right? Who keeps the lights on if they reach this target of 2028? Who would you trust to keep the lights on? It's a fundamental question that everybody needs to answer.
Okay. Given that we have enough installed capacity and ESLA to generate for you some cash flow, today you are not reliant on the liquid fuel, but on gas that we produce, the chunk of that domestically. And so end gas is just a small part of it because we are producing gas here through our fields. If you have fuel and some cash flow, then one will expect that because the MPP had enough resources, they should have done better than the NDC. Okay? Even though the number of outages that was recorded under the 10 of NDC is more than what they have recorded. That's good for them. But to see who has been more efficient in managing that little resources, I think that the NDC have done well. But the NDC have done well, but the MPP has kept the lights on, and the outages are minimal compared to the NDC.
And it's a very interesting question. I know that it's
everybody to vouch for government.
Weigh that.
You can't vouch for who can do it better.
Yeah, I mean, but that fundamentally, for many people, voting in an election, Dumso is the ultimate government killer, if you like. If you don't manage it well, people get very upset, they vote you out. So once you're projecting 2028 universal access, and when they sit down and ask them that question, how are you planning to keep pace with that growth by 2028? And what is the strategy to ensure capacity keeps pace, but you find the financing that sustainably provides a fuel to keep? We'll ask them that question, and then you've touched on that already. So we'll come back. Now let's also stay with the power generation a bit longer. MPP says they want to boost power generation capacity, but it also includes more specific industrial support. They want to target there with tariff restructuring, okay, that could lower commercial rates. And they've sort of make the point that their focus and priority is going to be for commercial and industrial purposes. And the rates will be adjusted so that it does not go below the residential rate. So there's always going to be cheaper. It's going to be cheaper for the industries compared to us residents. I will ask whether that is really a good way to go. But the NDC says it's focusing on expanding the mini hydro, thermal, and renewable power sources to meet rising demand. What's your comment on that?
Okay, the NDC also touched on the tariff restriction as well.
Yeah.
It's good. Ordinarily, residential should be paying more than the commercial and industrial sectors. And that is the normal industrial approach all over the world. Unfortunately, where industrial is paying more, residential is paying less. And so to restructure the tariff to move it to the other ends, I think it's a good approach. And if you go to many countries, particularly China and the other places, residential consume less power than industrial. Unfortunately, in Africa and Ghana, residential consume more power than industry. And so if they are paying cheaper rates, it means that you are not generating enough revenue from the residential. Okay? And so, and of course, they are not also productive. So let's direct the power, tariff, the lower end, more to the industrial and the commercial sectors than the residential. So I think it's a good approach they've taken. In the worst case scenario, it must be at par.
Okay. And so that you give priority to the industries because obviously they will create jobs.
For productivity purposes, drive the economy.
And then the NPP is proposing reforms in the fuel procurement for power generation, which we know is a big, big problem. And then making hydropower, for NDC, making hydropower more accessible and affordable, especially for vulnerable communities. So they want to really tackle the communities that need it more in the approach there.
Okay. So the issue about reforms in fuel procurement, we are more reliant on natural gas, of which a chunk of it is from our own domestic fuel. So it means that power plants or government is procuring fuel for the power plant through the GNPC. That's one. But then, quite recently, over the last 1 year, because of the doomsday we've been seeing and all that being blamed on, and exactly the case, on fuel supply, government had to procure liquid fuel as well. The liquid fuel is the problem here. Who procures it? And so if they have to be restructured to ensure that the IPPs themselves will procure their own fuel.
Part of the proposal that I've seen in the NPP manifesto.
Exactly. Then, of course, it's good. Because when you give it to, governments and its own other friends to procure the liquid fuel, it sometimes delays, as we have seen, and comes in quite expensive as well. I think that we should rather be looking more at generating more of natural gas from our own field. It means that we must grow our reserve, we must produce more, because most of our gas we get is associated with the oil we produce. And so the more we produce oil, the more gas we produce domestically.
And that's an important point that I also want to touch on before we end, because there's a problem now with declining production volumes in the upstream.
Sure.
So gas...
5 years running.
5 years running. In fact, we've been dwindling on the average 10% reduction on the average, according to the PIAC report, and 9.2% to be very precise. On the average, year on year, we're reducing. In fact, just last week, I just read in the PIAC report that for the first time, we've seen an increase. But
That's for the first half of the year.
First half of the year,
So we are monitoring what the second half
will tell us.
Like.
That is a worry, considering what you're just saying, that you need, in terms to keep pace with the ability to, provide a fuel, you must tap into your own resources.
Because almost 70% of our installed capacity is thermal.
Yeah.
And they depend on gas, which is cheaper than the liquid fuel. So we must keep pace.
Yeah.
And even this year's performance, if we are able to keep the half-year performance all the way to the end, yes, we'll see a growth in production, but that will still not surpass last year's performance.
Yeah, I mean, that is a very important point. And we look at the sector regulation and governance, so just mergers. And I want to come to the mergers, because that is it's been controversial.
Very.
In their manifesto, they say clearly they want to merge PURC with the Energy Commission. But we've seen beyond that, they also want to merge ECG, I believe, with NETCO.
Sure.
And they also want to add BUI. The BUI Power Authority is also going to be merged with the VRA. What you make of that?
If you say they, who?
Oh, I'm talking about the NPP. That's the NPP's approach.
They have been clear with their intention.
Yeah.
But in the NDC manifesto, there is something in there which is not quite clear.
Which is what?
They are also still talking about realignment of entities in the power sector.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. So it could be that they are also mooting the same plan.
But they'll have to tell us what exactly they mean by that realignment.
Let's get them out.
No, but that's an important point. I need to... Is it a prudent policy proposal? And if it is, considering the details we've heard from the MPP, because they are in government, and what you say, you're asking for clarity from the NDC, is this something that both should be approaching? Okay,
so there's never been anything wrong with mergers, okay, or acquisition and all that. It's part of a strategic plan for every entity and bigger conglomerate and government. Okay, so you have Joy FM, right? You have another station, Love FM.
Yes.
If you choose to say we are collapsing the two into one and call it Joy Love, okay, probably you are doing that to cut down costs, okay, enhance efficiency. So at the end of the day, your bottom line is improved. It's a strategic approach many people take, okay. But for us today, we ourselves, is the timing right to put the VRA and BUI together. You will say they are all hydro, based assets. But then BUI is running hydro. Let's remember that VRA runs both hydro and thermal. Unfortunately for VRA, almost all their hydro generation goes to either UCG and VACO. And these two aren't paying. And so it's the thermal assets that's keeping VRA afloat, because they direct it more to the export market, which really cash. So if you hive off the thermal assets of VRA, okay, then put the hydro of VRA and BUI together, what you've done is that you have exposed VRA. You've made them more vulnerable.
Yeah.
Okay? Then they will struggle to even put the hydro on. So we are saying that, look, go and deal with the liquidity challenge. Go and deal with the cash waterfall system, the inefficiencies in the ECG, in NetCo, the inefficiency even in GridCo, because we are still recording high transmission losses there. When after dealing with that and they have found their foots and they can rely safely on hydro, you can choose to hive it off. It's good. NetCo is struggling. ECG is struggling. You say you want to put two lame men together and call them what? Fit man? It's impossible. So the timing is wrong. Though it's not a bad approach.
Yeah, that's the point there. But I also want to alter the manifesto slightly. But something that all must deal with, which, by the way, is the IMF program. Remember, the IMF program is quite heavy on trying to restructure and deal with the energy sector.
Of course.
The energy sector challenges. And there are 15 interventions.
That's the elephant in the room.
Big one. That's a big one. And the government signed on. Remember, I say government signed on because whoever wins this year's election will have to implement those.
Yeah, you inherit it.
You inherit it, yes. And there are 15 of them. And let's go through them. This is just the IMF big-ticket items that every government must deal with. And so the reason why I'm bringing it up is that we're trying to measure whether both manifestos address these issues. Because whether you like it or not, if you win, you will have to deal with it. Because government have committed already. One of the first things they said is mechanism to enforce guidelines of the cash waterfall mechanism. And that is a big, big problem. And you just mentioned it actually before now.
Both of them have captured
some reform.
Waterfall mechanism, some reforms around that in their manifesto. It means that they are really conscious of what exists and what they stand to inherit. That's a new government, not a party I'm talking about. And so if you cannot ensure that the cash waterfall mechanism that is intended to ensure equitable, fair, and transparent distribution of all the distribution of cash to all the utilities, so all of them are kept afloat and are more liquid and not cash flow strapped, then of course you must ensure that the money that comes in there is applied the way it must be applied. But if you listen to the PRC sometime, and they tell you that what is collected in some months, it's not even up to half of what's expected to be collected. That's the first problem. And what is even collected, the 50% or less, is not deposited into the cash waterfall system.
So not everything that is collected goes in the cash waterfall.
Exactly. And so there is a leakage even before it enters into the votes or the cash waterfall mechanism. And so this is something that all of them must address if they want to see the light on. You can have all the installed capacity. You can have even the fuel. But if you are cash, strapped, you can't run the power sector.
Do you see a commitment on the side of the two parties to address this fundamentally in a way that actually leads to an improvement? The cash waterfall mechanism is the baby of the NDC.
Sure.
They introduced it.
Of course.
Okay. So,
but the MPP also worked around it,
of course, enhanced it. I know it's gone to cabinet for enhancement. So, who, in fact, has the strongest credibility going into next year to reform this in a way that delivers on your expectation?
Okay, so
which are the parties?
The one that gave birth to the baby understood which type of child I'm going to raise. Okay, so they understood it very well and was running efficiently to the point that they recorded some profits in 2014, 2015, 2016 in the ECG. And they almost recorded profits also in VRA. But for some forex exchanges, they recorded a loss at the end. But then the MPP enhanced on it. Unfortunately, they didn't stick to their own enhancements. That's been the challenge. And so as to who will adhere to the cash waterfall mechanism, by history and by records, the NDC have done better. But the MPP can do better because they enhance on it. And if they want to do it, they will deliver.
Another key thing in the IMF program, as far as the energy sector is concerned, energy sector recovery and reform, is new policy directive on procurement of new IPPs.
Very critical.
Very critical.
At what rate are you going to procure them? And how much are you going to sell the power per megawatt? Very, very critical.
Yeah.
The next thing that will be on the table to discuss is, can you procure the power without take or pay is something we're waiting to see.
And we've seen this government fight that. It restructured almost all the IPPO agreement to take out this arrangement that whether we use the power or not, we're going to pay them.
Okay, so for us, take or pay is not anything new in industry. Even in the water sector, in sewage, in the electricity, in the oil and gas.
But take and pay is the best, isn't it? Because you only pay what you use.
Okay, then it may be best for you as the person procuring the power, but the one selling to you. So assuming that both of us, government is buying power from us, yours is take and pay. Mine is take or pay. Okay, what take or pay does is this. I am assured of revenue stream flow. I can really get funding more easier because there's a collateral for the funders as well. If I choose to say I'm going for take and pay, right, and I become unpopular for government, they can choose not to dispatch my plants. Even though my tariff may be lower, they can choose not to dispatch it. And if it's not dispatched, I don't make money. So take and pay has its own, the benefit goes to government. But for me, the person giving you the power, I want to be assured of some consistent stream of revenue, okay? That can give me, and it can easily make me achieve a final investment decision quickly than take and pay. Okay, so it's good for government if they achieve that.
What restructuring do you see both parties must take on this IPP subject? This government have tried it quite a bit. Even the debt they've restructured, as ugly we know, shut down because they were expecting some money to come in. Both parties need to continue this because the IMF expects this to happen. What sort of restructuring do you want to see?
They must work around take and pay if they want to be popular. Okay, so they should go for the best. And this time around, we have a little room. Next year, we might not struggle so much for power in terms of capacity installation. Okay, so that 1 year, you quickly have to now begin to, what do? You don't do one-on-one procurement. You tender, you ask them to tender. And you look at the best person and the best price. That's the best for them to do. And they might be fortunate to have take and pay. Than take or pay.
And then we have this upfront weighted average electricity tariff adjustments, which is something that the PLC has been attempting to do.
It's been doing so well of late.
They have to keep that.
They have to keep that pace.
If
they fall back and they allow themselves to be influenced politically, in fact, we are doomed.
We've seen this regime under the PLC being very tough. And they've sort of kept to that.
I tell kudos to my brother Ishmael. That young man has done pretty well. And it's been tough. And we are solidly behind people of such.
But they are approaching next year. A lot will change. Whoever wins, a lot will change. Let's say the NDC wins. Do they continue with the work?
They must continue.
Okay.
I recommend that they continue. They are doing quite a good work.
Okay.
For many years, the PRC have not been biting.
In terms of that reform, who will you trust to keep this pace? Keep this pace of reform and have a PLC that is biting, but is also enforcing its regulatory mandate?
I think the NDC didn't struggle under the PRC, or the PRC didn't struggle under NDC, but they struggled under the MPP because sometimes they don't even have the backing of the minister. When they ask UCG to produce a timetable, the minister asked them, the former minister asked them to go and produce their own table. Okay, and that was the first time you saw even Gridco and VRA at loggerheads. You saw Gridco and UCG banter in the public space and all that. Yet the PRC has delivered. Okay, so even in times of, in tough times, they have delivered. Okay, and so we think that if they keep up the pace, they can, scale over the MPP's interference, even though the NDC didn't interfere so much. However, we didn't see this upfront weighted average electricity tariff adjustment under the NDC.
And We'll see whether they keep to this going forward. The IMF holding a cane of ours, conclude the PPA negotiations to reduce the take or pay liability, which is what we just talked about, and you expect all the parties to deal with. And then finally, let's look at this. Ensuring transparency in gas supply agreements by GNPC, which is another big elephant in the room.
Okay. So transparency, I'm not sure they're alluding to who supply, because the supply is coming from, GNPC. And the price is public.
Yeah.
But then GNPC are not getting their money.
Which is a part of the problem that emerged.
Of course.
Because they buy on behalf of they buy from the Ghana Gas.
Of course, they buy from Ghana
on behalf of
government.
ECG and government.
Yes, so I say government.
Yeah, and then they must get the money, because once they give you the gas, you use it, pay. But they're not paying GNPC.
They are not paying GNPC. It means that Ghana Gas is also not being paid. And that's the problem. And so if you address the cash waterfall mechanism issue, the revenue leakages, or the commercial and technical losses and all that, I think that we'll be able to have that flexibility to have GNPC get their money, get GNPC, get Ghana Gas paid, and all the other suppliers.
Just before we wrap up, on both parties when it comes to the energy sector, briefly, are you convinced that, have you seen enough specifics in the manifesto to convince you that they both really understand the problems that the sector faces and they have the solutions to deal with those problems?
Evans, if you go through their policies, you will see that there are lots of points of convergence when it comes to their policies. Few departures. And for the MPP, on most occasions, they are more specific as to what they intend to do. NDC, same. There are some few, they've been more specific in some areas. But then, as to how to even deliver those policies, it's a problem. One, for instance, if you say you are going to build, let's say, extend the bus infrastructure, then of course you ask yourself, where's the funding come from?
Yeah.
If you say we are going to set up a new fund for, let's say, for educational purposes or whatever, where's the source of funding?
Yeah.
Is it going to be contingent on the revenue flow from the oil we sell, or we are going to be taxed more for this? And so some clarity must be brought on some of the issues. That's very key. But largely, it looks as if all of them understand the problem.
Okay.
They are mindful of the challenge ahead.
We will put that question to them about clarity. That's why we're here. And my guest will join me right after this. You want to stay with us for that? Energy is a big deal. We will start, as you can imagine, in the area of electricity and power supply, because it's always a big deal. And which of these two parties really has what it takes to keep the lights on 2025 into 2028. Stay with us. Let's go. And thanks for staying with us. PMSS is always brought to you by Syntex Tanks. It is strong, it is tough. Academic Times, Pepsodent, Cavity Fighter, and Toothpaste. The Academic Times is an incoming graphic and online publication aiming to collaborate with university authorities and students to ensure that student research is published in summary form. Syntex Tanks is asking you if you're ready, because for the biggest giveaway from Syntex Tanks, you must certainly be ready. Syntex is visiting 15 communities, giving them water and making their day. Now, if you are a community and you want to benefit from the Syntex free water giveaway, just log on to the social media handles at Syntex Ghana and nominate your community. Syntex Tanks are strong, are tough, and Pepsodent Cavity Fighter toothpaste is the one I recommend for you before you go to bed, obviously, because you know that it deals with the foul breath that you may have after eating. So that indeed is what you should be purchasing tomorrow morning if you don't have it. But tonight, if you have it, definitely use it. My guest in the studio with me for this conversation, the big energy debate. You know him. It's Atacha. He's a Samuel Atacha. He's the MP for Boakwa South and former chair of the Energy Committee of Parliament. I'm grateful that he can join me for a conversation. And I was just commenting to him that last 4 years we did Manifesto Tracker, and he was here, but he was here in a different capacity. At the time, he was the sector minister for Works and Housing, I believe. And we were having a conversation about the housing sector. And I still remember that conversation because it was one of the most exciting ones I had on Manifesto Tracker. So thank you very much for coming back. You were a man of many parts. Then you were Minister for Works and Housing. Now you're here talking about energy. Those two are day and night. There's a Chinese war between them.
It is indeed.
Great to have you. But the man who is, as far as that sector is concerned, has a lot of track record in the area, was at the Energy Ministry, became a minister, became a member of parliament, I mean. Were you afraid that I said you became a minister? I thought you accept the prophecy.
No.
Edward Bauer is MP for Bongo and NDC Manifesto spokesperson on energy. Great to have you, Edward. Now, let's start with a big item. Every Ghanaian wants to keep the lights on. Now, both of you promise to achieve universal access to electricity by 2028. And as we've just been analyzing, if you achieve that, every home in Ghana will have access to electricity.
That is so.
What that means, obviously, is that power consumption will grow exponentially, right? Far more than what we currently have. The question there is, how do you keep the lights on when you achieve that particular target? Considering that even now we have challenges, mainly with financing. I ask you first because you are in government.
Well, the issue of energy has a variable that if you ignore, you won't achieve your results. And that's what you said, financing. And people believe that you turn a light on because of your wishes. You have the financial basis to do that. And if you are not able to, with the greatest respect, mobilize the financing to power energy, I'm afraid no matter who is in power, that problem will stare at us in the face. And there's no dispute about it. So what are the ways to achieve accessibility to electricity within the time frame that we want? We'll come back to the same problem.
Yeah, in your manifesto, though, how are you supposed to deal with that problem? What is the plan to keep the lights on?
Well, one measure...
2025, going forward.
Well, we are very much concerned about the energy mix because half the time people believe that we should just say we need to import enough fuel or have enough gas to have these resources generate the electricity we need. But if you pay regard to the natural advantages we have, the power of the sun, it's called solar power. It's one of the renewable sources of energy. We are a tropical nation. Our manifesto is very clear that one of the main pillars of trying to ensure that we have sufficient energy is to go solar. And we've captured this very strong in our manifesto. Why is that easy to do? If we're able to do a rollout of solar in the neighborhood of 2,000 megawatts, we'll be able to have the lights on.
Okay, but how much is that going to cost you? Where are you going to get the funding?
Well, right now, if you pay regard to our financial space, we should never discount what the private sector would do to bring it about. So one of the major things we are going to do, by reason of our even current challenges of how we are overstressed in terms of our expenditure and then debt, servicing the rest of it, is to give the private sector the space to intervene in the energy space, and then they'll be able to help us with this, solar issues.
So solar, 2,000 megawatts.
2,000 megawatts.
All of it provided by the private sector?
Yes.
But that sounds very unrealistic. 2,000 megawatts of solar.
Why should...
And what would government role be in that then?
Government's role is to create the investment space. Let them know how they'll get their investment back. You see, let me drum home the hard fact, is that whenever you want government to be oversubscribed in terms of infrastructure rollout, you come back to the IMF. That's what people should see. People believe that, oh, the government can do everything. Imagine you hide a world-class Ghanaian company, if you like. Now look, this kind of hemorrhage in terms of transmission losses that electricity company is going through, let's privatize it. And let the private company plug in the loopholes and take, excuse me to say, good returns for their investment. We'll be going through a situation in which somebody is saying that I'm trying to distribute electricity, but I have 30% transmission losses. So far as the NPP is concerned, if you didn't give space to the private sector in these critical areas, we'll not be able to solve the energy problems. Where are you going to get the money from for us to get 2,000 megawatt of solar power? I mean, what is our revenue base as a nation? So we are very much conscious of the fact that if you go solar, which is very natural to our environment, you'll be able to, solve the electricity problem.
2,000 megawatts solar will be long term.
Yes.
In the immediate term, if you win in 2025, you would have to provide gas supply, which really fundamentally is a challenge. I remember talking to you here in the midst of the brief energy crisis we had. And the main problem you identified, money to procure, was an issue. That problem largely still unresolved. We see that the energy sector debt is still significant.
It is indeed.
What is the NPP solution to that problem immediately in 2025? Remember that the economy and the fiscal space will be even more constrained then.
Well, the solution is that the NPP envisages a situation in which the cash waterfall mechanism, which is, I believe, a very sensible arrangement for the independent power producers to do what is needful and generate power for EC, Electricity Company of Ghana, to distribute and sell. We're going to have an arrangement in which, at the point of payment, deductions will be made there electronically. So, for example, when somebody wants to pay for electricity, maybe 2,000 Ghana cedis, the price waterfall mechanism, which is the arrangement in which all the money should come to a pool and then distributed in reasonable proportions, should have a micro significance where you are paying the money. And then if it's a coin that an independent power producer should have, instanto, it should go there. Rather than we saying that, oh, let's leave, let's get all the money in the pool, and then for one reason or the other, maybe even the Ministry of Finance will interfere. And look, this is the money, this is here, we have now, because of maybe some constraints, let me defer the payment to the independent power producers. And the consequences will kick in. If the independent power producers are not, paid back in good time, for them to keep their system running, we'll have these challenges that we are going through. So the most important introduction that the NPP wants to bring is that let's have a very good technology in which, at the point of payment, the mechanism will start, rather than we saying that, look, let's wait as long as we want, and then we put the money together, and then somebody says, look, I don't have a way to look at this transmission line, I don't want to apply the monies there, or somebody's complaining about the supply of, petrol, and therefore, can you defer your receiving money from the cash waterfall mechanism, or some political, if you like, decision which will violate the essence of cash waterfall mechanism. Independent power producers are not giving good money to continue to do the work they
I'll come to track record on this cash waterfall mechanism shortly. But Bawa, still on the subject of track record, you had 3 years of doing so. That is always something that is thrown at you.
4.
Well, here we go. Thrown at you anytime the subject of keeping the lights on is concerned. they've had 8 years, and largely in those 8 years, significant part of that, they've kept the lights on. In your manifesto, I see that you would also achieve the same target you aspire to by 2028, increase, electricity access. With that track record, though, what is the proposal in there to ensure you don't return to the situation that NPP always throws at you? You just said him. He said, I said 3, he said 4.
First and foremost, let me thank Honorable Atachia for being he's a gentleman I respect so much. He was my chairman for 3 years, am I right?
Yes.
Yeah, about 3 years. And we had a very good working relationship. Now, but respectfully, I will say that one of the most unsensible things that I've ever seen in a manifesto is the fact that the NPP captured that they will add 2,000 megawatts of solar, that's renewable energy, a variable, energy source to our system. Technically, it just doesn't make sense. And I explained to you. And as to how we'll get to getting the lights on. First and foremost, know that there's this, the intermittent nature of renewable energy makes it such a way that anytime you put up a renewable energy, you must have a corresponding conventional plant to take charge anytime they are not able to produce energy. I'll explain to you. Let's say you decide that you are putting 10 megawatts of solar into the system. The solar will only be available to you from, say, 8 o'clock to, say, 5 o'clock in the evening. So it means that it's not going to be available to you in the evening. Because of the fact that there has not been the technology in terms of power storage has not really gone into its advanced stage yet. What it then means is that you must get 10 megawatts power from conventional plant that will take care of your night. And so if you were and that's why usually you look at when you are adding renewable energies, particularly verifiable, intermittent renewable energy sources, you must ensure that your grid is flexible enough to take it. So granted that NPP goes and they are able to achieve their aim by adding 2,000 megawatts. So what it means is that they must make a complementary 2,000 megawatts available sitting there idle to take care of the intermittency nature of of the renewable energy. And so it doesn't just make sense. And I think that whoever captured that in your manifesto did you a disservice. And maybe you could have outsourced that aspect to a consultant.
But let me take you to your manifesto. Because of that criticism, you say, as far as generation is concerned, that you implement an energy transition strategy that will augment thermal and hydropower production with nuclear and other renewable energy sources like solar.
Yes.
So you're also doing same.
No, listen to what I've said. I am not saying that. I'm not saying that you shouldn't add solar. That's what I've said.
It's by your saying what?
The quantum. 2,000.
So the question to you is, what quantum of solar energy are you bringing on stream when you say
what you do is
solar?
So that's the answer I'm not going to give you. So first and foremost, let's state that as we speak now, based on access to electricity, if you look the percentage of access of Ghanaians who do not have access to electricity, just about 14% of Ghanaians who do not have access to electricity. Based on our installed capacity now, or even available capacity now, we should be able to take care of that. So it is not a threat. The fact that you extend access or that you target that by 2028 you declare universality doesn't mean there's going to be a threat there. Yes, I agree with you that as you move on, even based on what Energy Commission gives us, that on annual basis, usually we have between 8 to 10% in terms of our energy growth. And so as you go on, you plan that. So the access doesn't really threaten that. What threatens the inability to put the lights on is the issue of finance.
Yeah, but you haven't answered my question.
Yes,
how much solar do you want to add to the national grid? Because you've promised in your manifesto to add solar.
Yes.
You must have a target.
Yes, so that's why we intentionally use the word complement. You know why? You first and foremost will have to study the flexibility of your grid.
But you haven't done that yet.
We are not in power. We don't have access to those data. We don't.
Oh, but that data is available.
No,
the Energy Commission report that I was reading before now lays out for you. By the way, you talk about annual electricity consumption growth rate. It's just around 4%.
Yeah.
right? They have that analysis that you can use to calculate how much solar you require.
So the point I'm making is that as we speak today, your conventional power that you have, both hydroelectricity and thermal, it's enough to take care of your needs. You cannot begin now to start procuring additions, capacity additions, when you do not know how, what type of demand is coming into.
But you know that. That's the point I'm making.
You can't know that.
Energy Commission has projected for you what the annual growth in consumption will be for the next many years.
And in those years, what Energy Commission has indicated that any other megawatt will be added should be around 2028. Any additional megawatt will be added is around 2028. And in 2028, if I'm supposed to add solar, all I need to do is that any time I add solar, I must ensure that, so assuming that our capacity that we're supposed to procure, maybe, let's say we have 400. So Energy Commission says that X percentage of growth the following year. I do not have a situation where I need to add any figure, assuming that my peak is around 300. I don't need to add that. But anytime there's going to be an addition, what we are indicating is that first, we will have to match it gradually. I cannot immediately say, by virtue of the fact that I'm talking about transition, because of the climate change, we are dealing with trying to add renewable energy to our sources. So I go and procure X amount.
But the difference between you and the MPP only, because you started by criticizing it, is that both of you say you do solar.
Yes.
Both of you say you do solar. But they have told you, they give me a target.
And I said that
but you don't have a target.
No. The reason is simple. It's when you say, generally, there's a target that we all have.
But you don't. You say you want solar. But tell us.
The target is that we have always indicated.
Solar.
No. We have always indicated that the renewable energy component of our energy mix should be 10%, at least. That's what we have indicated. That is the target that we are looking at.
Yeah, that's in your manifesto.
Yes, it's 10%.
So that would even with the hydro, solar, everything else combined.
And in fact, that 10% is not just necessarily hydro, but it's, so, you know, technically.
It's a renewable component.
Yeah, I'm coming.
So that will include.
No, excuse me. Yeah. Technically, yes, you see Akosombo is renewable. But the target of 10% exclude our heavy renewables, like Akosombo and then Bui. We are looking at the, what we call the mini hydros, the 50 megawatts and other things, and non-hydro, those are the ones we're talking about, the fact that it should be at least 10%. That's the target. But I'm saying that is the target you have made. But you cannot get up, even with that 10%. 10%, if you are taking it, it will not amount to 2,000 because of the nature of renewable energies that we have and the way they behave. That if you have it, for example, in the morning till afternoon, to evening, you cannot have it in the evening.
Okay.
And so if you have 2,000, so let me tell you, they have always argued on the issue of idle capacity. So you procure a private sector man to give you 2,000 megawatts of renewables. And at the end of the day, if he is able to declare availability and you cannot offtake it, it means that you must pay for the capacity charge. Meanwhile, at the same time, because you have procured about, say, 2,000, because of the nature of that particular resource, energy resource, you will have to have a component of it that comes as, for the night, when it is not available.
Okay.
How are you going to pay for that?
I asked the fundamental question at the beginning. I want to return to that, which is how are you keeping the lights on?
So first is to look at, so let's now look at the financing. I just wanted to deal with that. So now let's look at finance. All of us in the energy space, including the MPP, have agreed that the challenge why we do not have lights today and we don't have lights going on regularly is because we simply cannot pay the utilities who produce the power for us. The big fish in that whole arrangement is ECG, whether it is gas, whether it is power. And I explained to you why, whether it's gas. For the petroleum side, the gas part, the gas producers say the OCTP partners, I'm talking of E&I, they produce gas. Because in Ghana, we do gas to power. So they give the gas to, the power producers. They produce the power. ECG is the one supposed to sell it. They are unable to account for what the power they have sold. And so they are not able to pay the gas supplies, who are the fuel supplies.
So what's the solution? I mean, I want to
So I'm coming. So I'm just saying that, so the issue has to do with ECG. What is the problem with ECG in terms of their finances? One, their collection rates. Currently, as we speak, the ECG between August 2023 and 22 and then June or July 2024, their collection rate has been roughly around 43%. However, PURC has given them a benchmark of 98%. What it simply means is that PURC has said that for 2% percentage points of your what you call your collection losses, we will factor it into your tariff. So you pay for it in your Ghanaians. So you and I will pay for it. So ensure that 98% you collect. So if they have a collection rate roughly around 43%, what it means is that roughly almost about 40 to 45% are.
Okay, so you've stated the problem.
I'm coming.
We all know the problem.
So don't rush me. Don't rush me.
No, but
don't rush me. Don't rush me. Let me make my point.
The problem is we analyzed it.
No, I'm coming. I've stated, but I'm coming. Mm-hmm. Now, because of this problem, then the issue of cash waterfall mechanism came in. Mm-hmm. The current administration and the managers of the sector have deliberately ensured that it doesn't work. Why? To be able to let the cash waterfall mechanism work, the point was that ECG ran a single auditable account, such that the rules of when you sell, if we know that you are even making losses, when you sell and you get the power and you put it in that account, all of it is clear to all of us to see. Then we can see how we can apportion these particular monies among all the players, such that they meet their operational cost. When they meet their operational cost, they at least will be able to what? Generate power. Currently, the cash waterfall mechanism is not working.
And you say what you do, the manifesto, you review and enforce the cash waterfall mechanism, ensuring electricity company of Ghana promptly passes on the appropriate share of the revenue to Upstream.
Fantastic.
Question is how? How are you reviewing?
The first, you see, as we speak now, nobody even knows how much ECG collects when they sell their power. Nobody knows how much is in the cash waterfall mechanism.
So what the review looks like? What does it review? What does it look like?
Is to look at how it is even constituted. I'll give you a typical example. When we met the IPPs, they indicated that in the cash waterfall mechanism, they are supposed to be taking portions of the money. These monies that they are supposed to be taking, they are not represented, for example, on the committee. And so they sit down and then company A, they say today, this is the amount we are paying you. I am not even so sure how much was put in that particular account for us to be able to work with. That's the first point. So transparency. So introducing transparency. 2, to stop ECG from using the monies that they receive for other procurement processes instead of rather using it for paying for the power they make. They receive this money. Because these monies are found in almost 61 accounts in 16 banks. So you are unable to police all these particular monies. And so when it comes, you do not even know how much they have received. And because you do not know how much they have received, you do not know how much you even apportion to the energy suppliers and to the fuel suppliers.
So you're going to get them to
ensure that they put it in that single account. And it is not even the...
But that's a solution that the IMF, it was an IMF...
Yes, it's the IMF.
That this government also instructed the ECG to do that they haven't done.
Yeah, so that tells you that this... I mean, can you imagine that if I were to come into your house and you have your son in front of you and you want to just show that you are in charge, and you tell your son that, look, I'm talking to my colleague, can you go to the bedroom? And your son...
You are implementing that solution. You implement that solution.
So you implement that.
Okay, those are two things.
3, you remember that even before we left power, we realized that we needed to improve on the efficiency of ECG generally, even the technical efficiency. That was one of the reasons why we decided to sign up for the Compact 2, program.
Yeah. So what will you do to the ECG?
No, that's the point I'm trying to be patient. Don't rush me. So the point I'm just trying to make is that, unfortunately, these gentlemen, what they did, just because of just simple procurement processes, because of self-greed, we lost that $190 million from the Americans, and therefore we could not inject on that. One of the areas we are looking at for, and this, my flag bearer has stated it very clearly, that if it demands that we'll go back and renegotiate that, because currently we have been taken out. We've lost it. Yeah. But yes, we will go back. Yes, but you and I know that any time there's a change of government, you can go back and renegotiate some of these things. You can go back based on what kind of goodwill you send to the individual. Because we need to have capital injection in ECG. ECG has equipment that are so obsolete that to a very large extent, the technical losses alone hovers around 20%. I'm not talking about commercial losses. Just the technical hovers around 28%. It is never acceptable.
So you to fix that problem, you renegotiate that.
So yes,
to get the
because
money
we need
to
to have
restructure
capital.
it.
You see, the most important thing is that we want to leverage on private sector capital, leverage on private sector expertise to be able to make ECG very efficient. To be able to do that, one of the energy sources that yes, Kufuor was the one who started this issue of what do you call it, the Millennium Challenge Cooperation arrangement. That's the Compact One. We saw it to be a good thing. We capitalized on that to take care of the what do you call it, the energy sector. It is something that we can go back to renegotiate or again open up because we do know that you need capital injection in that. So one, efficiency in running the cash waterfall mechanism. Two, injecting capital in ECG to be able to change their obsolete to reduce their losses. And three, and that's the most important thing, get the right people in that establishment. You can put all these people there. If you do not have the right people who have...
You're not going to appoint people on political grounds based on their loyalty to the party.
Remember that it's an executive power. But even in appointing somebody, assuming that I decide today that I'm appointing, what do you call it, you must first meet some competences. Okay. If you do not have those competences, trust me.
Let me bring it back in. Yes.
Yes. You know, I'm not surprised that 2,000 megawatts from solar, which is our natural resource, is like a mirage to NDC. Anything which is not big enough, you know, and they can't digest it, they think it's impossible. The same thing happened with the free senior high school, but it is doable. Why is it doable? Because you don't have to beg God for the sun to shine. The only thing you need to do is to have the technology to harvest the sun and the power of the sun. How you store it, even if it's too much for you, our neighbors are there for us to export electricity.
Yeah, but that initial cost to set that up is very expensive.
You see, it is not expensive if you invite the private sector to come to your aid and give them the space that this will be your return on capital. One of the things that this nation has been doing with the greatest of respect is to think that everything should be government delivered. And if we take care, I mean, it's like the government can't do anything. The same government will have issues of major expenditures. You know, if you look at, excuse me to say, the payment to our workers and the rest of it. If you're unable to do it, then the whole infrastructure of the nation will plateau and won't go forward. So, as we've said, they raise the cash waterfall mechanism. This is what you said. Let me quote it for you to say that we are not as nebulous as our people are saying, but we say, digitize the revenue platform.
But you made that point earlier.
Yes.
That's primarily what you do.
Yes.
Except that your track record on this subject isn't great. You asked the ECG to operate one account. They have not done it. We've seen the PLC chasing the ECG over the last few weeks, and we've that conversation we had. There was a huge fight between ECG and PLC, trying to get them to respect the cash waterfall. They're not paying into it. So you haven't even enforced the basic architecture around the cash waterfall mechanism. Why do we trust you that digitalizing it alone will fix it?
I don't know your association with President Kufuor who is about to end. You're talking about the manifesto of, if you like, a flag bearer and the new patriotic party.
Is that an admission of failure under the Kufuor administration as far as this matter is concerned?
I will talk about challenges, you see, because let me tell you what is very critical for, our forward movement. If you leave a lot of things to human beings, you know, and it's not digitized, as he's talking about, we have challenges. We never believe one day that drones can supply medical stuff to remote areas in Ghana because of technology. So if we're able to use technology enough and say that, look, somebody is going to buy, electricity for 2,000, cash waterfall mechanism should begin at the point of purchase, as we rightly said, through technology, we'll be able to solve this problem. And it's very, very clear in our manifesto.
That's what you do. So, I want to briefly.
Look.
Briefly, because
yes,
I
I'm
need to
coming
move to the upstream.
First and foremost, you have already introduced this digitalization in ECG with your energy, your ECG power app with Haptel. you have paid, you procured it, even though it's even single sole source, $171.8 million, Ghana cedis. After you have an arrangement, service arrangement that says that for all the revenue that you receive, 0.95% of it is supposed to go to the service provider. You do not have access to how much the person receives when he collects the money, because you are not the primary collector of the money. Your losses are still hovering around 43% after introducing this. Even though you have spent the taxpayers' money, $171.8 million. Indeed, after you had reported that you had done that, you remember I was in the committee with you, you had reported that you had paid $171.8 million. The service provider says, I have only received 25 million Ghana cedis. Your record in that clearly suggests that it is not about digitization. It's about the human beings involved. And you have saddled this country with a 5-year contract on that.
But let's also put it in context. If you read the latest ECG financial report, the revenues have increased quite exponentially to 15 billion, historic, on the back of the Haptel intervention. We did that analysis.
That is
recently.
Wrong. That's a wrong thing. Let me tell you what. No, it's not the figure.
That's you.
No, it's not the figure.
I want to go to the upstream. I
won't let this pass.
Let's go to the upstream.
No, I want to correct you. I won't let that pass.
Correct me on what?
You see, the increase in the revenue.
I want to go to the upstream.
No, the increase in the revenue is because of the increase in tariffs.
No, not necessarily. I mean, we did an analysis here the last time.
Efficiency.
The ECG financial statement mentions that. And if you look at when the tariff came in, we did that show 3 weeks ago.
Which financial, which one is that?
The 2023 one. That's the very latest one. I'll share that with you.
Yeah.
But let's stick to the issues. That's the by the way. Let's stick to the issues. I want to go to upstream because I don't have time. The upstream sector is important. Why? Because in the last 3-4 years, we've seen this consistent decline in production. And that is one of our financial backbones, revenue-wise, for this economy. And Mr. Thatcher, I need to put that to you because it was under your word that we've seen this. The PIAC report had said that on an annual basis, we're seeing some 10% decline in production in the upstream sector, obviously impacting revenues also. I see in your manifesto that you want to fix this somehow. How are you addressing this in your manifesto? You say you review the Petroleum Act and put in a new fiscal regime to make Ghana a preferred destination for exploration and production. Yet, the upstream sector players, a lot of them are very unhappy with you. There's a lot of litigation. Some of them are unhappy with the tax arrangement, and they're suing you in, Tallow, exactly. There is consensus now, if you look at the PIAC report, that this sector has been mismanaged. We are no longer attractive to investors in the upstream sector. And that is why we're seeing the decline we're seeing that's a big, big problem. I don't see enough in your manifesto to fix this.
Well, I want to state it up front that there have been challenges. And I do not see any serious government who will say that I wouldn't want to find more petroleum resources upstream and then increase the revenue. I do not support any arrangement in which foreign investors will come in here, sink in a lot of money, and then try to locate oil and they have challenge. So I don't support an arrangement in which you can broker deals with, for example, Tallow, and then we'll be able to solve issues of taxation to the extent that now let's go to an arbitral court in UK.
You concede you have mismanaged the sector?
I wouldn't say so.
The track record of NDC is stellar. The productions that they supervised over their time, you came in 2017, to date, not one single barrel more in terms of first oil you've managed to bring forward.
But is a good fortune. It doesn't mean they did any extra work. And let me stress this. It takes a lot of money to make an oil find. And there are certain things which are ongoing until you find it. It wasn't NDC that found the first oil. It was Kufuor, if you care to know. So when the oil is found, and it takes a lot of effort and energies and monies, everybody is acutely aware, and it coincides with your time of governance. So people might say that, well, that is you. I don't think it's a good logic to say that, oh, we've mismanaged the upstream sector and we've not made a single file. Probably a lot of things are happening in the backyard. And one of these days when you really hit the fine, you see...
But it's also about the regulatory environment, the fiscal regulatory environment that encourages investors. They're so comfortable that they want to put their monies, and it costs a lot in the upstream sector to explore and to produce. The NDC laid a foundation, didn't they, that allowed the investors to feel comfortable.
We've not made investors uncomfortable. There's also an international trend because of the energy transition that serious people who believe in fossil fuels are pulling out. Talk to anywhere, even in Saudi Arabia and places, people believe that, look, the energy transition does not make it very attractive to go into, whatever length with so much capital to find, crude oil. So these are some of the factors that we should look at.
Let me have some specifics. In your manifesto, you say you introduce a new fiscal regime to make Ghana a preferred destination for exploration and production. What's fiscal regime precisely?
I don't have all the dynamics of it, but I can foresee a situation in which it's like we give the investor who sank in so much money a lot more space to recoup the investment, rather than, for example, people foisting on investors that upfront, let's take some percentage, and then we'll pay you the percentage when they've not even,
Started producing.
So the whole understanding of fiscal regime is what will make an investor see that the strangulation in terms of our appetite for quick money in this capital-intensive area is gone down. They should sink in their money. They should rake in some returns before we look at our fortunes too. But I do not have the entire understanding of what will go into that. But I can see a situation in which it will be attractive because there is some financial space for the investor to recoup the investment.
But what you say, you want to promptly resolve all the disputes between the upstream oil gas players and the government of Ghana. How?
So for example, you have a situation where Talo currently is having a fight with GRA.
It's a fact.
Over tax issues.
Atacha is not happy with that. You're not happy with that fight?
At all.
But what are you telling your government?
Well, we've made some representations, because I thought, with the greatest of respect, when I became the chair of the Energy and Mines Committee and I had representations from Talo that what is going on is not good for the nation, I went very far with the matter that, why don't you bring it home?
All the way to the president?
Very much so. That I do not see why, given the fact that even the players now in the whole world stage, they are leaving the fossil fuel arena because of the future of the energy transition.
So I'll come to you.
And then if you have a few ones who want to take risk, and there are local issues, not issues of technology and the rest of it, about taxes, it cannot be resolved. I also stated, I don't support the arrangement that, look, let's give some fight to Talo in relation to the revenue we want to rake in. I believe that this matter should...
Were you listened to when you took the matter up?
Well, I don't think I found the answer, because I thought that the first thing is to withdraw all the issues before the arbitral court and then come home.
Did you see that? Did you get a sense that your government was committed to listening and to doing what was necessary to resolve this matter?
Well, there were a lot of legal issues, but I believe that the legal issues were not of consequence more than the implications for the nation that one of your best players in an oil field in which the giants are leaving the field, you have a fight with the person. So the scenario of going to fight one of the remaining giants in the petroleum industry was a bad signal for Ghana. And I'll say it.
I guess then you agree with the NDC that they would work to negotiate an outcome
Well,
and settle the dispute?
I'm of the humble view that Bawumia would do better because of the hard fact that half the time.
He's the chairman of the economic management team when this happened.
Yeah, this is the sing song of NDC. And when you say, "Give me the steer," and then people are saying,
this is your ticket. I mean, so that's your approach.
I ask me.
Yeah,
Okay.
That's your approach.
So yeah, basically, first,
He agrees with you.
You see, in the oil sector, particularly in the upstream sector, because it is capital intensive,
very.
you need to have policies that are predictable. You need to have some stability when it comes to the laws that govern it. Because people look at all these things before they put in an investment.
Precisely.
Now you have a situation where you have an understanding that this is a type of taxes I'm supposed to be paying. Then one morning I get up and you slap 1% emission tax on me. That's huge. You look at it as 1%. If you look in terms of oil revenues, 1% is not a child's play. And so you do things like this. And so, as some of the argument of Talo is that some of the areas, they are even double taxing them on those issues. So first and foremost, you need to have some clarity for all the players in that area. Two, even guidelines in terms of operations. And I'll give you the typical example of the ENI thing that delayed us for almost 3 years. There must be a clear guideline that says that, look, if I have 2 wells that are communicating among themselves, when these conditions,
Springfield.
yes, yeah, when you have X, Y, Z prevailing, then this is exactly what we should do to unitize. So there must be consistency in that. And luckily enough, as a country, we have done that before. We unitize the Jubilee. The Jubilee fault is a unitized fault. When you have a situation where suddenly a minister sits down, or a government sits down, one party who has not even done an appraisal, because discovering oil is one thing. Appraisal to be able to ascertain the commerciality of it is another. The company has not even done any appraisal. Then suddenly you go on to talk about the fact that unitize. What are the parameters that are going to guide that unitization? And so when you have situations like this, you will see that irrespective of the fact that we have a transition period in terms of fuels, the investment that is done in our neighbors, Dorda and Togo, Cote d'Ivoire, are huge. ENI today has moved to what do you call it, Cote d'Ivoire,
yes.
And they are getting more things. Two, you have, we just finished talking about power and gas issues. Currently, we have a deficit in terms of these players producing gas. We have a deficit of 50 million scarf for our power generation. That's why on a monthly basis, we have to spend about $46 million to procure liquid fuel. Talo, as we speak today, says that with the right price and guarantee of payments, that I will be able to pump out an extra 100 million scarf of what they call gas. That will take care of this challenge that we're having. Because first and foremost, apart from the fact that gas is a transition fuel, it is cheaper as compared to liquid fuels. But currently, they are not ready to do it. To the extent that Ghana Gas is forced to sign what we call a conditional agreement to get the GPP2 because they do not have guarantee of feedstock.
So the NDC approach...
You see, the approach is basically what we have done in the past. Transparency, policy consistency, and to a very large extent, also looking at the fiscal regime. And I'll explain to you why I say the fiscal regime.
So I asked you the question about fiscal regime. What would you introduce?
So that's the part I'm just coming to. So for example, it is when you have the shallow waters and you are drilling in them, it's not the same as when you go into the ultra deep. When you go to ultra deep, it's very expensive. And again, this is very risky. Now, you do not, by virtue of the fact that you think that you have the risk all your basins. So because you have the risk all your basins, your carried interest for every player who comes is 15%. You can't do that. He will go to a place because he knows that at this particular time, everybody who has fossil fuel lying in the belly of the floor in his country wants to pump it out like crazy. He will go to a place where the terms are better. Because if you are telling me that even before you do anything, 15%, I should carry you throughout my exploration up to this, and then later on, you will then come in to take it. I won't do it because it's a very risky area. It is one of the reasons why Talo left. I said Talo, Exxon. Two, we said that when people are going into those areas, our acreage sizes are terrible. If you look at the acreage sizes we give to them, are terrible. They are very small compared to our neighbors. Now, And by our law, we say that when even somebody goes, because of the whole idea of after some years, you need to delineate the parts that you are not producing and give it out to the state. They make that. Most of these people, when they in ultra deep, when they find it, they have to first they need a number of years to know which are the spots that they can begin to say drill and other things. If you tell him that in the next 5 years, he should delineate and then hand over the rest to the state, he will not even come in because he's not too sure even where he has settled in now. The contract area is even the best, is a sweet spot for him. So this is one of the areas we're saying that, look, in terms of that, we need to even look at how our laws are being dealt with in terms of how we delineate those contract areas that are supposed to be given back to the state. What is the period for that? Acreage sizes. When it is a very risky area, do we still insist on the 15% carried interest? These are areas that you want to look at. And again, you must have laws that apply to everybody. And the typical example is the ACE arrangement. How on earth will you get up and say, I'm a player in the industry, and the player in the industry, there are conditions that you give to me that I need to follow. Then suddenly, a colleague comes, and when a colleague comes, you decide to take the same law that is governing me, you bring it to parliament and alter it to favor that particular, player. Obviously, I will feel very, look.
And I see your big target is to hit 1 million barrels of oil per day by 2030.
We have what it takes. Because you see, if you look at, in terms of actual discoveries, we have about 40-something discoveries in this country. The only challenge we have is that people have decided not to move further in terms of appraisal and to take a financial decision as to whether they want to invest in it. They want to be sure that when they invest, they will have the returns. Guyana is there and giving them better deals. Cote d'Ivoire is there, giving them a better deal. Other African countries are even also discovering. And so
you're going to improve the fiscal.
And then even not only fiscal and non-fiscal, because
fiscal,
acreage.
Regulatory, of course.
Yes, and then because acreage, for example, is not about fiscal, but it's about giving the person enough space, enough area to be able to.
If you can bullet for me the fiscal interventions you put in place to make the environment more attractive, just bullet for me.
So I said first, depending on how risky the area is, our carried interest has to be reviewed.
We change, okay.
2.
So you're not going to have this fixed carried interest for everybody.
Yeah, they say 15% for everybody. No, that cannot be. 2, we are also indicating that even within the particular fiscals, that there should be some level of stability. So we do not have a situation where you get up in one day because the president, the government thinks that they need more money. They say emission tax 1%, then you make it. No, we should have some stability in those areas. And 3, to a very large extent, let there be consistency in those in the calculations. But let me be fast to add something. You see, we also need to really build the capacity of GRA. You see, if you look at all the oil players, if you do not have a situation where, and not only GRA and the Foreign Petroleum Commission, the arrangement is that when you discover oil, you start producing oil. The rule says that you allow the operators to recover cost before they start paying for, the taxes. If you do not build the capacity of your, for example, your regulator, maybe Petroleum Commission, to be able to audit the expenditure of the players, they can pad the cost for you. If you do not have GRA staff who understand petroleum economics and petroleum financing, to be able to look into the books and detect and see what is happening, you definitely will have shortfall.
So you also build the capacity.
The capacity of that. And of course, we had done that earlier on, but I think that there's an additional need to do things like that.
Give me 60 seconds on this. What would you do with the gold for oil?
We are taking it off.
So you scrap it?
Yes, because you see, you and I know that IMF says the government of Ghana must make arrangements to exit. Because currently, if you look at the exposure of Bank of Ghana, it's huge.
But you say you expand gold for oil.
It is eminently sensible you do that, for the simple reason that if we don't have the requisite foreign exchange to meet some of these huge exposures, and that we leverage on our gold for purposes of meeting some of these expenditures, why would you want to stop it?
But, Honorable Techa, just to draw your attention.
It will be terrible.
Okay.
Just to draw your attention to something.
It will be counterproductive to sort of cancel the gold for oil arrangement. And what is the alternative? You don't have
so you see, the policy objective.
That is very unfortunate.
No. So the policy objective.
Briefly,
the policy objective of gold for oil was to stabilize the cedi. That was the policy objective.
And you're going to say the CD is...
As we speak now, can you look straight into my eyes and tell me that the CD has been...
It would have been worse.
The objective has been... it should have been what?
It would have been worse.
You remember where it was 12?
Okay.
Where it was 12, they indicated that if it was under NDC to be 16. You remember that story?
Yeah.
Today we are 17.
Well,
it would have been worse.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
But quick one. I want to state strongly here that your assessment, see, revenues themselves are not... a test are not a test of the health of a company.
That's what the ECG
and I say that within that particular intervening period, tariffs have increased over 100%.
Okay.
So you can't look at just absolute figures of revenue and use that to make your
calculations. Thank you very much.
I just want to say
my dear brother and friend, by every permutation, and by every measurement, you can say that MPP has been stronger in the area of energy delivery than NDC.
Okay.
There's no dispute about it.
The verdict is yours on December 7th. Enjoy the rest of your evening.